Hello, Suite fam. Welcome to the NetSuite podcast, or welcome back to our loyal listeners. I'm Kendall Fisher, your usual host, but on this episode, I've handed the mic over to our content marketing manager, Ian McCue. He's chatting with Lee Buescher, founder of Architectural Overflow, a commercial and residential architectural services company. Lee kicks things off by diving into his background and how he started and grew the business, noting a partnership with Southern Living as a pivotal moment of growth. You'll have to tune in to hear what impact that had. He then dives into some of the challenges Architectural Overflow hit while running on QuickBooks, especially around e-commerce, and why the business ultimately decided to implement NetSuite 10 years ago. Lee explains how NetSuite has helped the business better serve its customers, explaining why they recently added SuiteProjects to handle the complexities of project management and how it provides clients with increased visibility into project progress, including project profitability. He then concludes with his number one piece of advice for fellow founders, so keep listening to find out what it is. Coming up next.
You're listening to the NetSuite podcast, where we discuss what's happening within NetSuite, why we're doing it, and where we're heading in the future. We'll dive into the details about the software and the people at NetSuite who are behind all the moving parts. We'll also feature customer growth stories, discussing the ups and downs of running a company and how one integrated system can help your business continue to scale.
Hey there, Lee. How's it going today?
Great, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, really excited to talk to you today, learn a little bit more about your business. So, Lee, to kick us off, could you just tell us, kind of in your own words, exactly what Architectural Overflow does?
Oh, good question. Well, I would say, we really have two primary offers. First, we kind of provide architectural services for developers, builders, architects, and homeowners. And secondly, we provide an e-commerce platform for shelter publications and smaller architectural firms to sell home designs.
Great, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what do you think makes you different from your typical custom home design firm that's helping you build a plan for a custom home and, kind of guiding you through that process?
Sure. I think you can look at the market a couple of different ways. So if you look specifically at the architectural services side of our business, we differ in a couple of ways. Much of our consumer work is really focused in the pre-drawn house plans industry, which is, people look for designs and, traditionally it was in magazines or books, and, now it's on the internet as that's taken over. There's thousands of websites people can find ideas. These would be specifically the architectural designs. It's a good option for people that want to do a custom home, but maybe get a little more value than going directly to, a high-end architecture firm. And secondly, we customize those plans so people buy them online from a myriad of websites or magazines, and then we customize these plans for their specific needs or building locations, which is a little different than a traditional kind of one-off firm. And then a lot of our work, we're really partnering with other firms, architects being one of our primary clients. So we're producing construction documents for them, helping them out with overflow work, as the name implies a little bit. And we partner with these smaller offices and sole proprietors that just need help producing work, especially as busy as it's been the last couple of years.
So you're working with both people that are actually, designing their own home, as well as firms that are helping people build homes, or just building homes and developments and stuff like that?
That is correct. That's correct. And really just design from scratch, we do a little bit of it, but not a ton. We just do some small projects, starting to get some larger ones in that methodology.
And it seems like a lot of your work uses CAD software and building information modeling. Could you explain how you use those technologies, and do they make it a little more cost effective to build a custom home than it is with an architect drawing up plans just for you?
Sure. CAD or computer-aided design has really been around since the early 90s, especially in the residential side. And it was really about, initially it's really just more than an electronic pencil. You really saved the architectural firm time and produced more accurate drawings than when you drew everything by hand. We don't do a lot of, BIM or building information modeling necessarily in the residential side of things, and it sort of depends on how you define that term. There's a lot of pieces behind that, from carrying it from design, specification, all the way through construction and maintenance. I think for homeowners, really, it's about leveraging tools that produce, 3D modeling, being able to visualize the home. So how we create these documents, has changed with BIM specifically, but how much of that data, we might not have a lot of the data on the back end, but we do produce the modeling and the visualization that really helps people see the space. And I think that's one of the challenges for any homeowner, is visualizing those 2D documents in 3D.
And just getting into your background a little bit more kind of personally in the history of the company. You started this company 2007, so a ways back now. Did you kind of have a background in architecture or home design, home building, and what led you to start your own company?
Sure. I did go to school for architectural design a long time ago. CAD was really just starting to become prevalent in the industry. Surprisingly, my actual first job was design. I worked for a firm that designed and built data centers, so computer rooms all over the country. And that really gave me a big background on mechanical, electrical, fire life safety systems, in addition to residential and construction. So I really primarily worked in commercial initially, but I think anybody that goes to school for architecture or enjoys home, design, always dreams about home design, always wants to do residential.
And why did you decide I want to do my own thing and I want to start my own company?
Sure. Well, originally AO, Architectural Overflow, was, as the name implies, it was a freelance drafting service that I basically did in the evenings. And that's how I started it. And I probably did that for 10 years. I always did want to potentially have my own firm or company, but life gets busy. I was working, work and personal life demands, right? You have kids, all that stuff. And so I kind of shut it down for a long time. In its current iteration, though, when I did start it up again in 2007, I was working for a shelter publication in the housing kind of market, pre-drawn plans, and that was sold to a private investment group. And as a lot of times happens in those transitions, a large populace of the companies looking for their next opportunity, as I was. And I had been helping out an architect friend of mine in Atlanta for a year on some projects. And surprisingly, a group of projects came up at that time. So I fired AO back up again, and we started doing it. To say it was an interesting time to start a residential design firm is probably an understatement. And I did question my decision a few times, but I always kept battling forward, and I figured if I could survive this, the largest housing recession in history, I could survive anything. So here we are today.
Yeah, what a time to start a home design business. So the roots of this company really go back before 2007, just as more of a side job. Is that fair?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, in the early days, it was really commercial work, though, that I was doing. I did a couple of houses, but it was almost all commercial work at that time.
Gotcha. And so, you start this company in 2007, obviously some tough years for the housing market right after that, but were there any kind of key moments in the history of Architectural Overflow where you said this company, really has legs? I'm actually building something that has real potential here. And could you share some of those moments with us and maybe what they were like to experience as the owner as well?
Sure. I had a big moment. I think there was one in particular. We were working on we were doing small projects all over the country, but I had made a lot of connections at my prior firm, and I continued to do some small, houses and manufactured housing, you name it. We worked on a number of different things. And then in early 2010, Southern Living Magazine approached us to really take over the management of their house plans business, which included, e-commerce, CRM, sales, customer service, fulfillment, accounting, and that really launched our firm into what we are today. I mean, we didn't have a system in place at all at the time, but I told them we could do it, and here we are.
Say yes and figure out the rest later, right? That's,
exactly.
The entrepreneurial mindset in a nutshell.
Surprisingly, I did go on vacation the next day, so I might have spent a lot of vacation time thinking about the next steps when I returned. But the kids were young then, so it was all right. I was able to work early in the morning.
So obviously that was a really big turning point for the business back in 2010. Has the business kind of just expanded and evolved since then as well, would you say? How has it maybe changed or evolved both since you started it and maybe since 2010 when the business took on more of its current form?
For sure. I mean, there was tough years too. It's not easy anytime you work with a large company, they have their own challenges, and they were still, reeling from the reduction in advertising, due to that housing crisis. So it was lean times for them as well, and they weren't willing to make a lot of investments in other things. And so it's always finding ways and opportunities to grow organically and do slow things. We really focused on doing work for consumers in those early years. But I think we changed, it was maybe 6 years ago, we decided as a group to really start focusing on some clients that could provide some repeat business, so business-to-business clients, specifically developers and architects. And I think we really enjoy working with traditional architecture. We do a fair amount of our work in the southeastern U.S., which obviously has a lot of great history and architectural styles. We enjoy that work. We enjoy sort of new urbanist development, really smart growth, and support that. And so we work with a lot of firms that do work on those kind of projects, and it's unique and really enjoyable. I think the staff enjoys it as well. It's a good mix and a good variety.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been with NetSuite for 11 years now, as we were kind of talking about before we hit record here. But do you remember what led you to look for a new business management system back in 2010? Was it the Southern Living deal where you said we need something better than what we have right now?
Yeah, absolutely. That was really the driving force behind implementing something. I had continued to research it after I'd left my previous firm, and I did a lot of operational work for them as well. So I was on a lot of those teams that looked at systems or decided how we were moving forward for operational type systems. So I always kept an eye on them, and I was always researching and looking, hoping to do my own thing. And it was fortunate that they reached out to us and really gave us a launch. And put together a loan with the bank, borrowed some money from family, and figured out how to implement NetSuite. And we were targeting 90 days. It took us 120. And that was the early days. That was before these, Suite Success packs that companies have now that really help quickly get them up to speed.
Yeah, I think 120 days is nothing to sneeze at. That's still a pretty good turnaround time, especially in 2010. And with some of the horror stories you hear about ERP, I think most people will be thrilled to get it done in 4 months.
And it's challenging. It's a bit. The business is not that large. From a revenue standpoint, it's somewhat complicated. Business. Even though it's smaller, it still has all the same needs as a large business, right? All the different components, all the different functions need to work. So, and NetSuite was really the best option at the time.
And at that, before NetSuite, you were using QuickBooks, I think, like most small businesses do, when they get started. What limitations were you maybe having with QuickBooks? What did you say we need from our next system that QuickBooks or anything else you were using can't meet?
Yeah, QuickBooks is correct. That's what we were using. Again, like you said, as a lot of firms do. It really was satisfying our need at the time for the amount of work we were producing and the type of work. But I knew it would never support, our e-commerce platform that we wanted to put together, and as part of that Southern Living project, and even the stuff that we wanted to do on our own, we needed, more functionality. So it was just an evolution, and we knew we were going to get there eventually, and that was just the kickstart we needed.
2010, I think was a long time ago, especially in technological terms. A lot obviously changed since then with the speed at which things move. So kind of along those lines, why did you think we want a cloud finance system at that time? I don't think it was necessarily the go-to thing that, this is what everyone's doing. It seems like it was starting to catch on, I feel like, at that time, but it wasn't the default. So was that an important factor in your decision, or something that you thought kind of hard about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I was initially researching it, I think it was still called NetLedger yet for all those older gentlemen and ladies out there.
Yeah.
It's before it became NetSuite, but we used some homegrown systems at our other firm, and we're kind of approaching it from a catalog style almost. We were early to the e-commerce game. I think we launched our first database-driven website back in '97 on a Netscape platform, probably running on a Mac or something in the closet. And so over the years that evolves, and I kind of knew firsthand what supporting an on-premise system involved, not only from the capital expenditure, the cost to put it up, but then also the maintenance, managing the IT side of it, and also really to do it right. I mean, you can put a system in place, but can you keep it up 24/7 and have redundant failure for everything and all the security? It was just something I knew we didn't want to do in-house. I knew this was sort of the future, was the direction we wanted to go, and I was looking at stuff for years. And NetSuite really just not only offered the most comprehensive functionality at the time, but was really the best performance for a web-based system. I mean, this was pre-Web 2.0, so systems were notoriously slow, and connections to the internet. You were happy if you had a T1 line, which is super slow compared to today's connections. And they really had a good solution on how they solved that with a good blend of server-side and client-side scripts, and really provided a good performing solution for the web. And that was one of the main reasons we went that direction.
I think it's so interesting that you're not necessarily the typical small business buyer, in the sense that you have this background in technology. You're keeping up with this stuff, even aside from looking for the system for your business. You're just staying on top of these things. So it makes sense that you would be on more the cutting edge, if you will, and know that this is the way things are going to go. And 11 years later, I think it's pretty clear that the cloud is the way to go. to put it
for sure. Now it seems like an easy decision, but back then it was a little harder. I mean, I think we knew we wanted to do it, but it was definitely a risk. There wasn't you certainly didn't have hundreds of examples out there to look at and say, okay, this is how we should do it. You sort of took your business processes and said, okay, this is the way we need to make it work in the cloud, and we pulled it off. But it was certainly not as prevalent as it is today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does your business have trouble managing inventory, projects, or even getting paid on time? Don't let spreadsheets and QuickBooks hold you back. If you want to get your business to a better place, take action now and make the move to NetSuite. Stop paying for multiple systems that don't give you the information you need when you need it. Ditch the spreadsheets and all the old software you've outgrown. Now is the time to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. NetSuite gives you visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more. Everything you need, all in one place, instantaneously. Whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions in revenue, save time and money with NetSuite.
Join the over 24,000 companies using NetSuite right now. Let NetSuite show you how they'll benefit your business with a free product tour at netsuite.com/business. Schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/business. netsuite.com/business.
Thinking back to when you first kind of got up and running on NetSuite, started using it day in, day out, what do you think were some of the biggest improvements you saw right away after switching from QuickBooks and any of those other solutions you were using at that time?
Yeah, and it really, funny, it really wasn't about the improvements for us, Ian. It was really, in reality, we were launching a whole suite of apps and capabilities that we just didn't even have before in-house, right? Taking on this functionality. So it was really about empowering our users internally with tools that could satisfy, our customer and in turn their customers, and really do something that our competitors couldn't offer at the time, and it's paid off with a long-term relationship.
And how could you get into kind of the details, if you will, of how NetSuite helped you meet your customers' expectations or serve your customers maybe better than you could before?
Sure. I think just having everything in one spot, right? Everything in one system, being able to handle calls, integrated with the e-commerce platform, all of our orders. Obviously, the industry was migrating from phone-based ordering to internet-based ordering. I think at the time in 2010, I believe it was still heavier, maybe 65%, maybe even 70% of the orders were handled over the phone at that time. Just as people were still ramping up, high-speed internet connections, everything at their house. And certainly, mobile phones weren't as prevalent, right? The iPhone was only been out 3 years, right? And before that, it was, nothing. You'd use mobile. And today, I think it's, 75% is done over the internet, and a good 40 to 50%, from some sort of a mobile device, whether it's a tablet or a phone.
So you've been using NetSuite for 11 years now. Could you talk a little bit about how your use of the system and maybe some of the different modules or applications you're using, how that's grown since you first signed up back in 2010?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was really new for the whole organization. We offered, a kind of new functionality for everybody, and honestly, we have every employee on it. Even some of our contractors, in some form. We sort of start out with employee center where people can at least track time for payroll or contract work to projects, and then just keeping it easy, and then really just access to having one spot. We have offices in 3 locations, and it's worked out really well. And surprisingly, all this web-based systems came into play and made a lot of sense. Obviously, in 2020, when the pandemic hit, we were sort of up and running within a half an hour all over the place. We had already kind of been in that mode. I think the value of having all the different modules, from order entry, customer service, the Salesforce, everything tracked in one spot. It allows people to check status and understand what's happening with orders without having to call and check in with everybody. It's all kind of one central truth. And we use it for everything: order entry, customer service, fulfillment, financials, payroll, project tracking, marketing, e-commerce, analytics. I'm starting to sound like Evan Goldberg here. I'm going to have a commercial.
We don't have time to get into all that, although it's such an extensive use. We could probably spend the rest of it naming off products that you use. But one product I did want to ask you about specifically, Lee, is SuiteProjects, which I know you're kind of still in the process of adding. But first of all, I just want to ask, why did you decide to add SuiteProjects? What's the need for it?
Yeah, and we've been using sort of the standard built-in functionality of projects since we started, which, if on the technical side of things, it really behaves as sort of a unique or special kind of sub-customer. So you can tie multiple projects to a customer and track all that data, and an invoice at that project level sort of rolls up to the customer. But and we customized the system and added some fields to really track that data. And for our smaller residential projects, it really served its purpose. These were 3 to 5 week type projects, maybe 1 or 2 people involved in the company. Easy to sort of get those out with that base system and keep track of things, right? But now, as we've grown, the offices have gotten larger. We've added another city. It's just the complex projects have grown as well. We went from small single-family homes and cabins to larger homes, townhomes, condominiums, mixed-use projects with some commercial space, live work, just projects that take a lot longer time-wise to track, and also more parties involved, and just that visibility was really the biggest piece. And it was really the project profitability beyond even the tracking. It's easy when you can look at something and say, okay, this should be, a 40-hour project or an 80-hour project, and you just sort of keep an eye on it with the time tracked to it. But when you're utilizing outside sources and costs are coming from multiple locations, there was no way to report on that with the standard projects, not easily. You had to run sort of multiple reports and then try to combine the data. And even then you really wouldn't get to it. So it was really about starting to understand kind of that project profitability and really supplying that visibility to our project managers, or as we call them, studio leads in the office, sort of the people that manage projects at each of the locations.
Yeah, I love the level of detail there. Really helps me understand, exactly why you need this and how you're going to use it moving forward. So when you said, we need some sort of more robust solution to help us with these project-based tasks, did you look elsewhere? Did you look at non-NetSuite solutions? And if so, what stood out about SuiteProjects compared to some of those other options out there?
Yeah, we did. We looked at several. There was a couple of needs. We have some of our larger architect clients, we may have 12 to 15 projects going on simultaneously with each of them. And they wanted some visibility, and that's really what triggered us to start looking at some different systems. And we did. We looked at Monday.com, Asana, Reich, really were the three sort of front runners that we investigated and, did some trial runs on. And they all had their pros and cons, and some are certainly easier to use. But it all came down to that last factor, and it sort of just reminded me of why I went with NetSuite in the first place, was keeping everything in one spot. There was no good way, there was no reason to have to double enter financial data and try to track that on a project-based system. It just didn't make sense. With all that financial data already in NetSuite, I knew there had to be a way to figure this out, and SuiteProjects is going to solve that for us.
And what do you think, just high level, are some of the biggest benefits you're expecting to see with SuiteProjects? What things might it make easier, cheaper, faster? All those things that we hope to solve with software. Sure.
Well, as you mentioned, Ian, we're still in the process. I'm hoping to deploy it here in early fourth quarter. We're kind of in the final stages of testing the workflows. But again, I think it's the visibility for our project managers or the studio leads again. For them to see where projects are at, an easy way for them to see every week, every day, sort of what's going on. And, we believe in sort of keeping all the employees in the loop as well. So them having access to it as well, they can see sort of what the scope of the work is and where they need to be and what their targets are. And I think it provides them visibility into it, the process as well, and gives them tools to help stay on track.
And you mentioned that you're using, some of the resources in NetSuite to handle this now, but are things being tracked manually to some degree now, or where are you handling some of the stuff that SuiteProjects will be able to tackle that the base NetSuite solution isn't necessarily capable of?
Yeah, no, we handled some of the stuff through the customization piece, but it's just the reporting and really that project process. And I think, as these projects get more complex as well, and we have different types of projects, SuiteProjects gives us some flexibility on the billing side of things, whether we're doing it hourly or flat rate at milestones. People won't forget to invoice at milestones. And just more flexibility in how we bundle our services to different clients will all be built in. And I think it's going to help us really take the next step and look at what types of work is the most profitable for our organization. What projects do we struggle with? Is it an employee or team issue, or is it are we not estimating high enough? Do we need to change our rates in some cases? And just looking at that and really focusing on what types of projects make the most sense for our organization. And this is going to help us identify that a lot quicker than the way it is today.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to be able to know where your highest profitability is coming from, what projects you should focus on, in the future that are going to obviously drive more of that bottom line money for the business. So just looking at the company a little bit, Lee, and kind of your plans beyond NetSuite, just as a business, what do you think the company's plans are for the near future? And to some degree, how could NetSuite help you get there? But mostly I'm just curious, where's the business going? How do you see the business continuing to grow, continuing to evolve in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think working to get, our sort of key customers and partners visibility into their projects and workflow as well. Because it's tough when you're utilizing, an outsource company like ours. You have clients calling to check on status, and, you don't have time to send 15 messages a day to 6 different people on our end to find out where some project is. So allowing them to have some visibility into that workflow will be valuable and time saving, and certainly unique in our field. Also, we're looking to expand our ecommerce platform offerings, provide a better consumer experience, improve, some marketing, our electronic marketing, and then tracking those campaigns. We're working a little bit with the SuiteCommerce team on a project right now, and how we might deploy some of those in the future to, additional domains and websites.
When you talk about giving some of your partners and customers visibility, is the goal for them to be able to access the system to some degree, or some of the reports that you put together? That way, like you said, you're not constantly trading messages with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of a web portal where they can check on the status of projects and just see even who's working on it and just where it's at are going to be kind of the key things, right? And nothing too, they may want to add some tasks. We'll look at it. Different clients will have different needs, but I think being able to provide that flexibility, is something that we can do uniquely compared to our competitors.
And just as a founder, I want to close with one question. You're someone who started a successful business, and like you said at the beginning, it started as kind of something you did after hours, after your day job. But if you could just give founders one piece of advice on how to successfully start and run a business, what would that be? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think I look back at really 2 things. Sort of know your numbers, understand your key metrics. What are those? Kind of boil down to the 3 or 4 sort of key things that drive, your work, right? Is it leads to proposals to projects? What kind of multiplier do you need, or, gross profit margin on projects, and then really just trying to manage that and understand it. And because you may think you're going to feel like it's one thing, but when you see the actual numbers, it helps you make decisions when you know it's another one. And I think secondly, really goes down to the part of the reason why we went with NetSuite in the first place. I've worked at a number of firms and consulted for others over the years, and I don't think you can underestimate the value of having sort of a comprehensive, cohesive system and having all that data in one place, even though it might not be best of breed. I know that's a big trend right now. People, take a bunch of best of breed systems, connect them all, but it still involves a lot of management and keeping track of it and contracts. And I don't think you can underestimate the value of having it all locked in one place, understanding every time you touch that customer, every time they touch your organization, and being able to connect that data over time. It's, we feel like it's going to really pay off for us.
Certainly great advice there, and I think know your numbers. It's simple, right? But it's absolutely critical, and if you don't do it, you're going to be in trouble pretty quickly, probably. So I think most people have to learn that on short notice. All right, well, thank you so much, Lee, for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and sharing all these great insights about Architectural Overflow.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Ian. Thanks for having me on, and it's been a pleasure.
Well, we could not agree more with that advice. Know your numbers and find a system that makes that easier for you. Hey, we know a company that could help. Wink, wink. Anyway, thank you as always to Ian McCue for hosting this episode and to Lee Buescher for joining. I also want to shout out to our editing crew over at Lampstand. And y'all know I would never end an episode without thanking you, our listeners, for tuning in. Check the link in the description of this episode to learn more. And hey, if you like what you learned, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like and review this episode if you're so inclined. Thank you, and chat with you soon.
You just listened to the NetSuite podcast. Be sure to tune in every week with more NetSuite developments, stories, and insights into the benefits of one integrated system to help you run your business.